Hey guys, Damien here. Welcome to the littleBIGsynths YouTube channel. In today's video, I thought it'd be really cool to walk you guys through this setup that I have here. I've been using this setup for about a month now, and I really love the workflow. It's a super awesome setup, not only because I have the Arturia Keystep Pro at the center of it, but this setup was actually used for my very first live stream performance as well. And if you guys happen to have missed that live stream performance, I will definitely leave a link in the description if you guys want to check that out later. For today, I really want to just take you guys in depth as possible through all of the connections that I have here, all the gear, everything from the MIDI to the recording, to possibly give you guys some insight into my setup that will probably give you guys some ideas for your setups as well. So if you're interested, let's go ahead and check it out. Alright guys, so I'm going to try to power through this as quickly as possible, trying to make sure that I don't miss too many details. I'm going to break this up into sections, starting with the instruments and some of the actual hardware, and then move on into the MIDI connections, and then into the audio routing and the recording. So starting with the instruments, I'm gonna start here on the Roland SCO2. The Roland SCO2 is a 3VCO analog monophonic synthesizer. And for this setup, I'm primarily using it for bass sounds, just because it does have those multiple oscillators, which is great for kind of stacking and kind of detuning or setting to different octaves, which help create some fuller, richer, and beefier bass sounds. And then moving on to the SHO1A, which is a digital synthesizer, but it has Roland's analog circuit or analog behavior technology, whatever it is. It's used to kind of emulate some of those analog nuances and characteristics. And the SHO1A is actually really awesome. It's one of the newer boutique synths that I bought, and I really love it. I really love the faders and the simplicity of the interface. The SHO1A is also capable of producing polyphonic sounds, but for this setup, I am mainly using it for melodic content and more the lead sounds. And as you heard, the SHO1A had some reverb and delay applied to it, and that was coming from the Korg NTS-1. Now the NTS-1 is a digital monophonic synthesizer as well, and in this setup, I'm primarily using it for effects, but I do use the arpeggiator in one of the jams that I did for the live performance. Then over here I have the JE06, which is a digital synthesizer just like the SHO1A. The JE06 is really nice for producing like chords and like pads and stuff, especially because it has this really nice chorus that kind of really fills up the background space. All right, so now moving on to the Volca drum. The Volca drum is a digital percussion synthesizer, and since it is a synthesizer, you can really fine tune all your sounds and really dive deep into synthesis and build some really nice kits that can range from beefy to more sharp and percussive to really clicky, abstract to traditional. Just a really unique little drum machine. For this setup, I did create my own drum kit. Anyways, I'm definitely not a finger drummer, but you can kind of get an example of the sound. I went for a kind of more punchy kicks and snares and stuff like that, just so it sits in the mix very well and kind of pushes through actually a little bit better. And of course, here at the center of this entire setup, I have the Arturia Keystep Pro, which is a really awesome keyboard and MIDI controller, MIDI sequencer with 4 tracks of MIDI sequencing. And it's actually used to sequence all of the synthesizers here, including the Korg Volca drum, thanks to its built-in drum sequencer. So anyways, all this stuff is being powered a little bit differently. The SH01A and the Korg NewTek NTS-1 are both being powered by USB, and this USB hub here, which is connected to a power supply. The JE06 is also powered by USB, but it's isolated to its own battery pack only because for some reason when I plug it into the USB hub, it introduces quite a bit of noise. So I had to just kind of separate it from this USB hub. All right, so then moving on to the MIDI connections, the Arturia Keystep Pro does have 2 MIDI outs. The first one is going into the Korg Volca drum, and the second one is going out from the Keystep Pro into the SH01A MIDI in. And then the MIDI out to the MIDI in of the SCO2, and then the MIDI out of the SCO2 to the MIDI in of the JE06. The cool thing about the Roland Boutique series is that even though they don't have dedicated MIDI throughs, the MIDI out can also be used as a MIDI through. So you can get this really cool daisy chained signal flow. And this eliminates the need for a separate MIDI splitter or like a through box, which is really nice. And I could have easily sent the MIDI out from this JE06 into the MIDI in, having this entire thing daisy chained. But the only issue with daisy chaining these synthesizers and devices is that if one of the devices is powered off in the chain, like for example, if the Roland SCO2 were to lose power or be disconnected for some reason, the SH01 will still receive MIDI since it's first in the chain, but the following devices will not. So everything is being clocked to the Keystep Pro via MIDI, aside from the Korg NewTek NTS-1, which is being synced up via this clock output here, just using a 3.5mm stereo cable into the sync in of the Korg NewTek NTS-1. And that is synced up just to make sure that the arpeggiator is matching the tempo of the rest of the devices. So with all the MIDI cables connected, it's just a matter of setting up the MIDI channels. The Keystep Pro has 4 sequencer tracks. Each track outputs MIDI on a specific channel, and then each instrument receives MIDI on its separate channel. So for example, here on track 1, which I'm using for the drum sequencer to sequence the Volca drum, go here into the MIDI channels menu, go to drum output, since I'm using the drum sequencer. It's set to channel 16, so it's outputting MIDI on channel 16, and the Volca drum is receiving MIDI on channel 16. The next track, which is track 2, currently set to MIDI channel 13, and the Roland SCO2 is receiving on MIDI channel 13, and so on and so forth. So track 3 would be MIDI channel 14, and track 4 would be MIDI channel 15. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the audio routing. All of the audio is being sent to my mixer here, which is just a Behringer Xenix 802 mixer. I've had this mixer for a while. I mainly got it because it was small and compact and didn't take up a lot of space on my desk, but it's definitely being pushed to its limits now. I feel like I will definitely need to upgrade to a bigger mixer eventually, but I've been using it for a couple of years now and it has given me no problems and it gets the job done. Anyway, starting here on channel 1, I have the Roland SCO2 connected using a 3.5mm TRS stereo cable to a single 1/4" mono cable. And then here on channel 2, I have the Korg Volca drum, also using a 3.5mm stereo cable to a single 1/4" mono cable. Now, I have heard that using a cable like this could potentially cause problems, or you'll kind of experience some kind of audio issues. But me personally, I've been using these cables for a very long time and I have yet to experience any kind of issues whatsoever. So I think at this point, it's safe to say that they do work in this situation. But with that being said, I think the proper way to connect a headphone output from like a Volca like this to a mixer would be to use a 3.5mm cable on one end and then a dual mono cable like this on the other end, and you would just leave one of the cables hanging out. So you'd only use one of the mono jacks. That's if you don't have stereo jacks available, of course. But for me, that just looks funky having that one cable hanging out. So I ended up going with these 3.5mm to single 1/4" monos. Now here on this next channel, which is a stereo channel, 3 and 4, I have the Roland JU06, which is connected using a 3.5mm TRS stereo cable to a dual mono cable here, connected to the left and right of this stereo channel. And on this final channel, which is also a stereo channel, I have the Roland SH01A being connected to the Korg NTS-1, using a 3.5mm stereo cable from the output of the SH01A to the audio in of the NTS-1. Using the audio in on the NTS-1, I can use the effects for the SH01A, and then from there, the output of the NTS-1 is being sent to the mixer using a 3.5mm stereo cable to a stereo breakout cable like this, which is a female mini jack input and a dual mono connector on the other side. Now let's go ahead and take a closer look at the mixer here. And we already went over all the instruments. So moving on to this next connection here, which is the control room out and the main outs. Now the main outs are going directly into my monitors, which are some Behringer K5 monitors. And then the control room out is going directly into my Zoom H6. So now these are both mono 1/4" cables. On the top here, I have these 1/4" like guitar patch cables. Probably can't see what it says, but this is an effects send, which is being sent to the mono input of this Boss RV6, which is a reverb pedal. And then the output of the reverb pedal, using both the left and right, or the A and B output for a stereo, for the stereo effects, into the stereo return. And with that reverb pedal connected, I can then use these effects knobs here to apply a specific amount of reverb to whatever instrument I want to apply that reverb to. So with the reverb pedal connected to this effects loop, I can then utilize the effects knob here on any of these channels and apply reverb to any of the instruments that I want. So in this case, I have the Roland JU06 here on channel 3 and 4, which has some reverb being applied to it. And for recording, I'm using a Zoom H6, as I mentioned earlier, which is a digital handheld recorder. and it is being fed audio from the Behringer ZNX 802's control room output into a stereo channels on the Zoom H6. Now I use the control room out to record all of the audio, combined audio of the mixer. Using the main mix, I can set a specific volume to the monitors, and then I can use the control room to set a specific level, output level for the Zoom H6. So I can have the monitors at a lower volume while still pushing a higher level to the Zoom H6 for recording. I have a condenser microphone connected to the channel 1 of the Zoom H6, which is just being used for this voiceover that I'm doing right now. And here I have some headphones connected to the headphone jack to just monitor this recording. I should also mention that I am using the Zoom H6 in the USB audio interface mode, which basically takes all of the audio that's being fed to the Zoom H6 and sends it over a USB cable to a computer, or in this case, it's being sent directly into my phone for recording. I record all my videos on my phone, and this kind of just speeds up the process of having to sync up the audio and video. So I got high quality audio being matched up perfectly with my video from my camera. Normally I would have to record the audio and then take the audio file and combine it with my video file and try to match up the audio with the video. So this kind of just eliminates that entire process and applies that high quality audio directly to the video and it's perfectly synced up. So now that we basically went over all of the hardware and connections, last thing I want to do is just give you guys an idea of like what the workflow is like. The Arturia Keystep Pro's workflow is really nice. I feel like it's really straightforward and pretty quick to kind of get some jams going really easily. And I'm really happy that I got it in the time that I did, because when I was asked to do the live stream performance, it was kind of short notice and I only had a little bit of time to put everything together. So the Keystep Pro definitely made the whole process really smooth thanks to its really quick workflow, and just being able to save everything, all the different patterns, and kind of avoid having to use the internal sequencers of each device. That alone makes it super easy. As a performance tool, just having all these mute buttons here to be able to bring in and out certain elements of a jam, trying to manually press pause on each of the sequencers can become a little more challenging versus, just like I said, just having everything right here at your fingertips. The Keystep Pro also has the scenes, which is really nice because I can load up different patterns or groups of patterns at once, so I can have everything set up for the next song really quickly. But the Keystep Pro is pretty simple, really straightforward when it comes to recording and performing. So let's go ahead and check that out. Now, starting with the drums here, I'm going to select track 1, make sure it's set to the drum sequencer. And I have my drum sounds. So basically I can use the step sequencer to input some steps. So I'm going to start with some hi-hats. Actually, I'll start with a kick drum. And then press play. Now I can go ahead and real-time record the rest of the sounds. So there we got a very simple drum beat going. Then I can go ahead and select the second track, which is the Roland S202, and kind of get some bass sounds going. So let's go ahead and record this. I'm actually going to make this one 2 bars or 32 steps. So now I got some drums and a bass line. I'm gonna go ahead and move into a main melody. So I can go ahead and select track 3, which is the Roland SH01A. Make sure I have some effects applied to it. Go ahead and add some chorus. All right, so for this one, I'm also going to set it to 2 bars or 32 steps, and go ahead and press record and press play. Actually, let me go ahead and audition something first. Then I can change up this melody a little bit by using the random octave, which will just select random octaves for each of the notes. So let me go ahead and solo this so you can kind of hear it better. Press shift and the random octave. And finally, for track number 4, which is the J06, I'm going to go ahead and add another melody or some kind of background accompaniment. So I'm going to go ahead and again set this to 32 steps or 2 bars. And there you go. I got a little jam going already, and from here we can go ahead and mess around with, bringing in and out certain elements of the jam. If I wanted to change up the drum pattern for like a second part, I can go ahead and copy pattern 1 of the drum and then paste that pattern. And for the second part, I'll change up the drum beat a little bit. I'll add a few more snare hits. Add in some randomness, some probability, I like to call it a little bit better. And actually for the first one, I'm going to take out that hi-hat hit, so you can hear the difference and change the pattern. And like I mentioned earlier, the scenes, which is really cool. I can just make sure that all of these patterns are saved. Now, for example, if on scene 1, I wanted just something like, say if I wanted no hi-hat and no chords. So I'll save that as scene 1. Now let's say for scene 2, I wanted the hi-hat to come back in. Let's go ahead and save this scene to scene 2. And then for the final one, let's say I wanted to switch drum beats to scene or drum pattern 2 and the chords to come in. And then I can save this to scene 3. So now I have 3 different scenes here. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that. So yeah, that's generally how I would go about creating the jam, or like getting an idea for a jam, and kind of saving patterns, loading up patterns, muting patterns, recalling scenes. You can even, like I said, add probability to certain drum parts or certain notes to make sure that they don't always trigger every time around the sequence, which makes a little more interesting drum patterns or sequences in general. So that's basically it, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you guys found it somewhat useful, informative, or at the very least somewhat entertaining. And until next time, guys, just stick around for more videos from littleBIGsynths. Thank you, guys.